We are following breaking reports of widespread. I just don't understand how anyone can think that.
Just hours before the U.S. government was set to shut down, the Senate passed a bill to...
Wait a minute. We have some questions.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Not the Authority podcast. I am Shandell here with my co-host, Sarah. And today we also have Sharmon Lebby joining us. Sharmon, did I say that right? I should have checked on your last name. Okay. Sharmon is a nonprofit leader, a speaker, and a writer. She's also a podcast host. She has a podcast called Unpacking Ethical. And she's here today to talk to us about her journey and her story. And hopefully we can pick her brain about ethical fashion, because I think that that's something that a lot of us have a lot of curiosity about. But Sharmon, thanks so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, maybe you can hop in and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what's brought you to where you are in life.
Yeah, I started out as a biology major, did a lot of neuroscience research. And as I was kind of not really getting away from that, but it was like losing its sparkles, right? I started getting more into ethical and sustainable fashion and started my own clothing line in 2016. And while I was doing that, it was me and a friend that were kind of in this. And I'm a very community oriented person. I like people. I want to be around people. And I was really looking for more of a community of support, and hooked up with 4 other girls, and we started a nonprofit called the Ethical Network of San Antonio. And it was started as a community organization. And so from there, after a few years, we're like, what are we going to do with this? So we ended up turning into a nonprofit. I had been working in and with nonprofits, most of my life. And I was like, I got this. I can do this. I did not have that. It was a very long, difficult journey, and very confusing as well. Like, you just get so much information from different people who are in different stages. But we ended up growing really quickly anyway. And I really attribute that to my community centeredness. But because we grew so quickly, so many people wanted to know how we did this and what we were doing and how we were getting grants and all this stuff. And so that ended up led me into this life of a nonprofit consultant, where I started like bridging all of this stuff together with my research, ethical fashion, environmentalism, and then of course just building really collaborative, community-centered organizations.
It's awesome, and such an important skill set. I've done a little bit of nonprofit work myself, and I understand how many hats just stack right on top of each other, and everybody is trying to do everything all at once. So I can imagine that having somebody on your side with the experience to guide you through it is really important. And I think Sarah and I have done a little bit of talking about, kind of where we're at as a society and needing communities to really take up to handle the things that the government either won't or can't take care of. And so I can imagine that there's a lot of people who need your help.
Hope so. And I'm always here. I talk a lot on threads. I'm like, okay, we got this, right? We can do this. This is possible. I think there's so many amazing examples of people doing it already. And it's not really this hard concept, right? I think people sometimes find it difficult to step outside of the world that we already know. And I'm like, I promise y'all there's other worlds out there. People are doing other things. It's possible.
Yeah, just like bypassing that like original programming and the narrative that we
Yeah.
have about the status quo, right? Do you find that like that comes into your consulting work quite a bit in the beginning, just kind of reshaping that framework?
It does a lot, and especially when I'm working with people when it comes to collaborative or collaboration really, in a sense, because I find a couple things. One, people are trying to collaborate with other organizations or businesses or partners that aren't really aligned with what they're doing, and then two, they're just trying to get something, right? And it's usually money or some kind of sponsorship, and they're just trying to get something. And I'm like, okay, we're already going into this with the wrong mindset if your entire thought is, what can I get out of this?
Mm, that's really
So I
interesting to think about.
actually don't have any nonprofit experience. So what would you tell somebody who wants to get started in, a different type of work without
Mhm.
necessarily joining an existing large organization?
Actually, that's probably your first step should be to like look at something that already exists. I always tell people, like, when you want to start an organization, the first thing you should do is figure out what's already out there and if there are people already doing something similar, because there, for environmental and like human services or organizations, there's about like 2,500 that start every year. I think for nonprofits in general, the number is 100,000. 100,000. There's like nearly 2 million nonprofits today. So there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, that's a lot of
And
split resources.
it's a lot of split resources. So if you can like work with another organization that's already there, you're already going to put yourself in a better spot. Now, not everybody can, and not everybody, again, is mission aligned and purpose aligned enough to work together. And that's okay as well. If you have to start your own thing, start your own thing. But the next step then is really to build your community and talk to the community that you want to serve and make sure that everything that you are doing is being led and driven by them. So a lot of times we have our own experiences and we're like, oh, I'll just do what I want to do. But I'm like, you're going to be working with a bunch of other people and you need to know that this works for them as well, right? You're just one person and it needs to work for the whole and not just the individual.
That makes sense. Do you know about the success rate of all of those nonprofit organizations?
So it's really interesting because what they give you in stats is really like at the 10-year mark. And I think it's maybe like 50% are closed by the 10-year mark. But I'm like, you know what you can do in 10 years?
Yeah,
And they always frame it as this failure. But I'm like, 10 years is a long time to be doing community service work, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do think a lot of them disappear after year 3. And it's not necessarily that they're not doing the work anymore, but they no longer have their 501c3 because a lot of them struggle with compliance things and just not understanding how the nonprofit world works. And so they get that 501c3 automatically revoked because they're not like putting in their annual reports and things like that. So that's where a lot of them kind of disappear. But also, of course, people always talk about funding and money and just not being able to keep up with the demand that their organization needs. So funding is a lot of big thing as well, but I feel like there's data out there, but it's weird and it's not really taking into account that everything that's going on.
Yeah, I can imagine that like locality would play a lot into that too, with like
Yeah.
local expectations
Hmm.
and all of that. And I know that like once you really get into the work, things start moving really quickly. And so if you don't have the right timeline in line to take care of all of the background stuff, that could be really challenging. How did your team kind of approach all of that when you started your community org turned nonprofit?
Yeah, not well, I can tell you that. So what I first I'll tell you like what I was really, really good at. So what I was really, really good at was like building community and building people that were interested in wanting to be a part of this. And I, managed to like build a membership model that accounted for like a third of our funding, as well as just building relationships and friendships with different people that could come in and do things. And like when we started pretty much in like 2020. put our paperwork in like 2019 and 2020, the world fell apart, of course. And
Yeah,
then
great
like,
timing.
yeah. And so I'm like, everything that had been in person, we had to suddenly go digital for. And so I use that to my advantage in order to, expand our reach a little bit, get more people involved. We did a lot of different talks and, virtual kind of gatherings. Um, and so that is what I did really, really well, was just building the community and building this organization up and making it real and building a structure. Now, what I did really poorly was building a really, really solid foundation. Like, I had the basic structure, but I didn't really have the foundation. And so I was needing help. I was doing a lot of it by myself. Like, I always said it was really ironic. I was building this networking organization by myself. But um my board members were like friends, or people who just wanted to help me out, and they weren't necessarily fully aligned with the organization itself. And so it was like a lot of talking and trying to get them to understand what we did and how to talk about it, and a lot of training in that sense, where I probably should have gone at, well, I probably should, I know, because this is what I teach organizations now, is to get the skill sets that you actually need. So it's just assessing like what I did well versus what I needed other people to do, and find those people that not only believed in what we did, but also had those skill sets, instead of we're just like, what do you need, Sharmon? And I'm like, I need you to know what you're doing already.
Yeah. Well, and I like sometimes I know for me, like it's like I need you to know what I need you to do. Like,
Yeah.
like because it takes like so much self-awareness when you're coming into something new yourself to be like,
Yes.
where are my strengths and weaknesses, and
Yes.
being able to find those people. So, yeah, I can imagine that that's important work as well.
So
It
if
is.
you need help, how do you find somebody if you can't pay them? Or, I mean, how do you get help?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups. Now, LinkedIn is a little different, but Facebook is a little easier if you can stand to be on the platform. Reddit actually has some groups as well, where you can just go in and ask people questions. A lot of them are helpful. So, they're human beings. There's people, so some people gonna get a little testy, some people gonna get a little nasty. Um, but that's the best way to do it. Again, is just finding community of people who are willing. I am noticing a lot of groups popping up on Alignable as well. Do you guys use Alignable?
No, I've not heard of
Like, no,
that.
I'm like, very few people use, very people I know. There's a lot of people on there, but I'm like, I don't really know anybody on Alignable. But there's quite a few groups in there as well, where, people just ask questions and kind of get help. But I have seen people give the most help in these Facebook groups.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know there's been like a lot of back and forth about like, our use of social media and like all the different roles it plays. So it's like it's always such a guessing game of where you're going to find what you need for each thing. But I have heard Reddit a number of times, and this is a conversation I have with my almost 15-year-old son all the time. He's like, "Mom, you just got to ask Reddit. Like that's where all the answers are. That's where everything's at." And I'm like, "I don't know if I have like the personality for it. Like I might have to have a 15-year-old male as my buffer for what you see on there."
That is a really good question, because I'm like, I'm not on Reddit a lot, but I see stuff on there, and I feel like that. I don't know. Is that the mentality that's needed to really? It's so interesting. I was doing a lot of research, and somebody went into Reddit for me, and I was like, thanks.
Yeah, I'm actually on Reddit a lot, and the interesting thing about Reddit is that it depends on the subreddit. So certain ones have great people in them, and then other ones, I mean, some have a mix, and then some of them you have to avoid totally. It depends on the subreddit if you're going to get helpful advice or just trouble. And the way I feel about social media these days is I feel like it just kind of switches around, and at a certain period of time, like one platform will be really good. Like I'm kind of coming back around to like Facebook and possibly LinkedIn a little little bit, even though I had kind of written those off. And like I used to love Threads, and now I think it's horrible. So I don't know. Do you have any like thing to say about that? Like, do you have to chase different sources around and
I think I think you're right. I think it changes a lot, but I also think you have to like be very diligent and intentional about building your algorithm. Because a lot of times stuff will come through my feed and I'm like, what in the world is this doing here? And then I'll go to the comments and I'm like, oh, like it suddenly makes sense. And and I think that's ultimately what it's about is like getting really heavy handed with that block button. Just, I'm not interested in this. And it takes work and it takes intention. And usually most people are on there just to scroll and kind of do what they do. But, I don't know, nobody really wants to do that amount of work to enjoy their social media platforms.
right? It's
But
true.
it takes work in order to enjoy your social media platform.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of luck in community building in utilizing social media as an initial platform to reach people still?
I do. And I really feel like Threads is probably the best at that right now. Like Instagram, it's almost completely useless, regardless of what that man says. He keeps saying it's all about community, but I'm like, you lie. Because you make it really, really hard to build
Yeah.
that community on Instagram. And I haven't been on Facebook as much, but I do find the groups are really helpful when it comes to community building stuff. So if
Yeah.
you I don't know how it is with starting a group right now, but if you join groups and kind of build through other groups, I think that's really helpful. Um, if you're using your real name, because a lot of people are anonymous these days. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
using your real name, you can, build a much more authentic community. But and LinkedIn is kind of the same way, but again, it takes some work to build that community. It takes some work to really build that algorithm, and it really means going on to other people's posts and commenting and liking, sharing everything, and showing yourself that hey, I am a part of this community, and I really want to be involved and engaged with you, and honestly, that's community across the board, right? It's digital and in-person communities. Like you got to put stuff into it in order to get something out of it. And it's really hard, I think. And we're in such an individualistic society that we forget how much we have to put into stuff to make it work.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times because of that individualism that runs rampant for us and the way that we've been engaged in social media is like for a really long time, probably prior to the pandemic and through the pandemic, as everybody was just posting everything. And then we saw sort of the consequences of all of that and what that leads to. It makes sense that people would be pulling back into groups and
Mhm.
changing the way that that looks. But I think you really touched on, you said something about belonging and knowing that
Yeah.
you have that. And I think that and I'm guilty of this, like looking for a community and being like, I need to find the place where I belong and trying to find that thing that's going to serve me. But what I've found over the last decade, trying to build community with my kids and stuff, is that you really can go into any space. And as long as you're willing to serve and you can say, hey, I belong here, that's where you're really going to get like that meaningful exchange.
Yes.
And none of us are really programmed to do that. So it's scary.
It
And
is. It takes a
yeah.
lot of unpacking and unlearning, and that's my unpacking as we talk about unpacking ethical. But I mean, it came from that, just all the unpacking and unlearning that you have to do from the way we've been programmed to operate. Yeah, so that actually, we have not recorded an episode in probably like 3, 4 years.
Oh,
So
okay.
we just did those 2 seasons.
Okay.
But it was like this great, I don't want to call it an experiment, but this great limited podcast where we really just kind of dove into all the different things that we were curious about and we'd heard people online talking about. And really sitting down with people, like you, recognizing that we weren't the authority in everything and really wanted to get some more diverse experiences and thoughts and sit down and unpack that together and recognize that we were all in this, interesting, fun learning space.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. So we could definitely understand where that drive comes from. What would you say you learned the most from that experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that I love diversity of thought. And it's interesting because I find that a lot of people don't. They feel like when people think differently from them, they're automatically like criticizing them, or it's some kind of like combative thing. And I'm like, no. I'm like, the whole point is that we're different, right? And just being able to allow a safe space for people to operate and think differently. Now, I get a little less tolerant when it comes to like, denying people their humanity.
Yeah.
We don't allow for that. But I think within different spaces, even thinking about one of the girls we worked with in the ethical network of San Antonio, like she was just really adamant about, in order to tackle the sustainable fashion realm, that we all do the same thing and everybody just needs to tackle it from one angle. And I'm like, like I just really felt, I'm like, there's some good in everybody kind of tackling this foundation from different areas instead of just kind of hammering one place and that's all we were doing. Because I'm like, there's so many different problems, right? And they all need solutions, and they all need solutions now, because we talk about the future, but stuff is happening with people right now. So
Right.
Yeah. I notice sometimes I see two people arguing and like I think they're both right, but they're just too focused on like their approach to the
mhm.
conversation. And it's like you both are on the same side. Like this doesn't have to be an argument.
We've lost the art of nuance. Like it can be a both and
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah and I talk
Yeah.
about that a lot. And like I think for me it's always such a gift to get to see somebody else's perspective when it is so different from my own,
hmm
especially when you're trying to tackle the same issue, because we
Yeah,
end up with blind spots, and if we don't address those,
absolutely.
then we're not going to move forward. And yeah, but it is challenging to sit in that space and to be flexible and malleable enough to be able to like accept what somebody else is providing you with.
Yes, yes.
Okay, are
Yeah.
you gonna say anything?
So I was just wondering if we wanted to hop into fashion a little bit, if we wanted to talk
My
about that.
favorite area.
Okay, that's my favorite too.
What led you to fashion in particular?
I think I've always been a fashion girly. I remember in high school, people would always be like, I don't think I've ever seen you in the same outfit like twice. And I'm like, really? Well, but I'm like, it was just always such a love for me and a way to express myself I think in an area, in a space. I grew up as a military brat. So there wasn't a whole lot going on, and fashion wasn't a big thing. We had our like base exchange, which was like a shopping area, and we had thrift stores. And so like thrift stores and yard sales and garage sales, whatever you want to call them, kind of became my thing. And that combined with my aunt always telling me like, Sharmon, it doesn't matter like whose clothes it is. It doesn't matter whose name is on the label. Like if you love it, you love it. And that's the end of it. And so I had really these amazing inspirations and people, supporting me and my desire to do wild and crazy things with my fashion sense. And I think I was really, because I learned to sew at a young age, I was always really connected to things that were natural fibers and home handmade stuff, hand knitted, just hand sewn. I loved it. I loved seeing designers do their thing. I went to design school for like a semester and a half. And then I was like, you know what? This is a little expensive and we're not going to keep doing this. But it was like $15,000 a semester. I was in
Oh
New York
man, yeah.
at Parsons.
That
And
is
I
a
was like,
limited experience
yeah,
expense.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I was like, we're not gonna do this forever. But it was this amazing experience just being in New York and learning from all of these. It was a lot of women. I had like one male teacher, but a lot of women who were in the industry and doing this for a living. And like just the more I learned, the more I loved and experienced. And so then a friend introduced me to the concept of sustainable fashion. And I was like, oh, like this is something I already do, right? Like this is something that just innate in me already, just being gravitating towards that slower paced life. And so I was, doing a lot of webinars, like reading a lot of stuff. And so I can't even remember what organization put it on, but they had like a 6-week kind of self-paced course. And I took the course. And after that, I was like, I can do this. And like the next year, I had a clothing line. So
Awesome.
and so and of course, the more you get into it, the more you learn. And even throughout that clothing line process, I was like, there is just a massive amount of waste really from just this like small little line. I had like 150 shirts made, and I was just appalled at how much waste from just 150 shirts,
And that
not
was you
alone like
being mindful of it
and that was me
even.
being mindful and not even I'm like, I think we had like 50 pounds of waste left over after that. And I just all I could think is like millions upon millions of pieces of clothing are made every year. And what is happening with all of that? And and so I kind of switched up my model a little bit to be it wasn't exactly zero waste, but we were like heading towards zero waste, right? Like trying to use every little bit. And it was so hard and so tough that like after a few years, I was like, you know what? I can't like just I'm just not okay with contributing to
Yeah.
more waste and more fashion in this space. And then so said I just like talked about it a lot and what I did and how I got there and working with a lot of organizations that were doing some incredible, amazing things in the fashion industry. And that's where I got my love instead of making my own clothes because or making clothes for other people because I still make my own. But yes.
That's awesome. I keep hearing this you can say like I can do that. This like I can do this attitude. And I think that that's so important and so cool. I wonder if you can share with us a little bit about how that developed in you, what you think like drives that because I feel like that's the thing that it's going to take all of us to kind of discover about ourselves to really take things into our own hands to build what needs to be built. What do you think gives you that motivation, that confidence to be like, yep, I got this?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of delusion, really. Like
I'm all about the power of delusion.
like, I am just very highly delusional. But I think on top of the delusion, it's just really it's curiosity. Like I am just exponentially curious about everything and willing to try anything and everything. And I think the number one thing that is maybe different from me than the rest of the world is that I look at success and failure very, very differently. And when people kind of think, well, if, this clothing line doesn't last for like the next 100 years, then you failed. And I'm like, no, the point was just to do it.
Yeah, to learn what
And
you
I'm
did
like,
from it so you could take that to
yeah,
other people.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I felt like that was successful in everything that I learned from it. And it was just a great experience. And I think ultimately that's what I'm looking for in life is just experiences. Like I just want to be like, hey, I've done that. That's cool, right? I either did it really, really well or I didn't, but I've done it. And I've learned from it and it was a lot of fun because I that's the other thing. I just want to have some fun, right? I'm not gonna bog myself down with this idea of perfection and just trying to make everything perfect and last forever, which is something I actually talk with my organizations about because I'm like, I want you to go into it and start with this idea of like, when is this going to end? Like, what does success look like? And and when are you done? And they're like, we haven't even started yet. And I'm like, I know, but but what does it mean to be done? Because I think when you go into it with that mindset, when you think of it with the end in mind, one, you're already planning for it, right? So we already know what happens when, the founder leaves, or what happens when somebody transitions out, or what happens like when we're not able to get the funding that we need to get anymore. So, what does it look like to be done? Because sometimes we're just chasing funding and just chasing things, trying to keep them alive and trying to survive when we could close it down and start something else and really thrive in not even another area, but just, something, just counterbalance to that. Just looking at something
Sure.
in a little slightly different area, or even just adjacent to what we had been doing. Because chances are, like I said, they're like organizations fail or close within 10 years. But I'm like, so much has been done, and chances are you're going to evolve in so many ways from the time you started to the time you get to that point anyway, and really have had so much impact. I think of one of my favorite fashion organizations, and I'm saying it's my favorite, and the name just like completely disappeared. Um, oh wow. Anyway, it was a fashion fashion nonprofit who was really, really big on just an equitable, just fashion world, and making sure like that garment workers were being paid. And they recently closed their doors at the end of 2025. But I'm like, they had been they'd been going for 10 years, and they had been able to like campaign and do protest and collaborate with other organizations and get like billions of dollars back for these
Wow.
garment workers. And I'm like, and I know it's hard for them to close their doors, but I'm like, but do you realize how much you have done in this last decade?
The impact. That's wild. Yeah. I can only imagine too, like the definition of what's equitable kind of changes a little bit over that amount of time too,
Yes.
because of everything else that changes. Um, when it comes to like ethical fashion right now, what do you think like the ideal model is?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, I feel like I just want to be like, no model is better. Like,
Okay.
I want to I love the idea of just reusing everything that we already have. They talk about the waste and how much I think they say that there's enough clothing on the planet to clothe everyone for like the next 10 years. Don't quote me on that stat, but it's something like that. And I'm like, there is so much out there already. Like
Yeah.
so much. And so being able to reuse what's already out there, I feel like is the ideal way to go. And then we can maybe start back up. But,
Yeah.
it's maybe a little fantasy world. It's okay. I'm happy living here.
I get it. So, because I've been like, so my grandmother was a seamstress, and my grandma taught my mom a little bit, and then my mom and my grandma taught me a little bit, and we've been trying to teach my daughters a little bit, and it's kind of a lot, but I do feel like it's super empowering. Like every
Mhm.
little bit more that we learn, like it's you just realize that you're not bound by anything other than your own creativity, and it's like
Yes.
really empowering to be able to like we'll go to we've got a shop here in Colorado Springs called Who Gives a Scrap, and so people will like just donate all of their extra like craft supplies and sewing supplies, and we can go there and kind of rescue this stuff from the dump, and it's always fun to see what they have and be like, what can I do with this? And so do you think maybe the solution for it isn't necessarily like fixing the way that the companies are doing things, but really empowering people to reamp those skills and to teach those to the community and see how they can clothe themselves with what we already have?
Yeah, in some ways I say yes, but I also think this is probably a both and situation
Yeah.
where the companies have to be regulated because they will never stop. But also, I think the less we buy from them and the less, we're getting all of that new stuff, and the more we are able to hone these skills and really reuse what we already have, um, they're going to be forced to start making less and forced to kind of move into this. And they're already being forced in some ways. A lot of them, they call it greenwashing, but a lot of them are trying to say how sustainable and good they are and that they're doing all the things because they recognize that people want it. But it's ultimately, how do we force them to really do that? And I feel like a lot of that's going to come from policy. And again, so this is one of those areas where, like, this is where we're chipping away from it at all these different angles,
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, we've got people working on policy. We have people, really like bearing down on corporations in order to get them to do better and produce less. And then at the same time, we as individuals and within our communities are really rehoning these like skills in order to make and do stuff ourselves. I have a friend, I'm gonna shout out a friend really quick who's like fashion. I don't know if you had her fashion revolution, but she's a rebel.
I love that.
And so she does all these little reels and videos on ways that you can like fix your clothes and to reuse them, because a lot of it's like, okay, what happens if this is too big? Or what happens if this is too small? Or like, how do I fix this? And so she has all these really fun, cute videos on how to fix your clothes, just to extend their life.
Their life a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
longer. Yeah.
So
That's
I
so
have a question. I like to make my own clothes too, and I'm new at it. And I also love to thrift. But one of the challenges I'm finding in all of this is that it's so hard to find natural fibers. And I generally can find a lot secondhand, but compared to the amount of plastic used in clothing and yarn and stuff, I'm really concerned about that. And also, buying natural fibers, that are, let's say local to the United States, are also incredibly expensive, right?
Yeah.
If you want to make your own stuff like out of cotton or wool. So, what can we do about that? I mean, in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, do we need to get more people to be alpaca farmers, or, what, we can't, I mean, without regulation, really get these companies to stop producing as much plastic unless people stop buying it, which is also part of the problem. But yeah, I feel like I get stuck there a little bit. So I wanted your opinion.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer because I feel like I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Because I get so excited when I'm like, this is 100% cotton. What? This is linen. What? But at the same time, I think I've changed my mindset around it a little bit. And not that I'm buying more polyester, but I'm realizing, okay, I don't need a bunch of clothes.
That's
And
true.
so it's okay if I can only find like, one thing when I go to the thrift store, or because I try, like this is polyester. This is a vintage thing I got, but I think I bought this probably like, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, before I stopped like just buying more polyester and plasticky things. But yeah, I've really stopped buying as much clothing for that very reason. And so I kind of like the idea of getting people to be alpaca farmers though.
Yeah.
Like that feels like a dream to me. I don't
Right.
know about anybody else. But there are these really fun like fiber sheds, they call them, where like everything is like really locally made, where they have like the alpaca and sheep farmers, and then the whole, I don't even know what they call it, how they turn that into threads, and then they build the fabric, and all of that stuff is usually within like a 100-mile radius in these little fiber sheds, and to keep things really locally. And I think if you can find yourself near one of those, even though they're still producing new stuff, but always find these really small, locally oriented groups to be a lot of fun and really, really interesting in order to keep things more sustainable.
So
That's
cool.
actually a really great suggestion. I might try to find one and then move there. I think that
It's
sounds fun.
Sarah's just gonna go live with the alpaca.
Look, I have a friend who lives, she in this like Rhode Island, Massachusetts kind of area, and they have one up there. She runs one up there. And I'm like, I think I'm moving. I've been trying to move for like the last 5 years, but I'm like, Boston is really expensive. I don't know if y'all know.
Yeah, I visited it wasn't last year, it was the year before, but I don't understand how people can afford to live there, quite honestly. But it's a wonderful place. I loved it so much.
I loved it too. And I really had been trying to move there. But every job I would be offered, it would be like $55,000. And I'm like, first of all, I make that working part time as a consultant. And I'm like, and I don't know how anybody lives in Boston, Massachusetts on $55,000 a year.
55,000. No,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I think that's happening all over too. But
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if they would call themselves a fiber shed. That's the first time I've heard that term. But when I was working in arts administration and nonprofit in North Dakota, there was like a really small town that had an old, I think it was like an old school building, and they had taken it over and they were like raising sheep. And so they had their own fiber. And then they started hosting like retreats and classes for like people within the state to come and teach them how to harvest the fibers and how to like make their own yarn and then how to use them and turn them into fabrics. And I just thought that was so cool. I didn't get a chance to experience while we were there, but it's really cool to hear that people are like returning to some of these things that, you know, we've lost
Yes.
agency over, and being able to kind of return to that. And I always think that's really cool because of just how much work goes into
Yes.
that. Like, I know my husband jokes, he's like, can we just get some sheep? Like, I need to like return to my Irish roots and raise some sheep, and then you guys will have plenty of yarn for your projects. And I'm just like, man, I know people who homestead and it's so much work. Like,
It's so funny because I watched this show, I think it was on HBO Max, and I can't even remember the name of it, but it was this woman in Atlanta who basically helps people with like their urban farms, whether it's vegetables, and she was helping people. And I was just like, I need a farm. Like, this
Yeah.
woman is going to turn me into a farmer. But also, I need to know where in North Dakota. I'm in Grand Forks. So,
are you?
like, yeah.
Wow. Okay. What a small world.
I know.
Okay. I will have to find, I think Nome is what's popping out.
Okay, interesting, because I'm like, I don't
In my
even know what that
memory.
is.
Yeah, it's called the Nome Schoolhouse in an Event Center, and it's in Nome, North Dakota, Nome.
I'm going to
And
take a trip.
yeah, no, I think I was really intrigued by what they were doing before. And I'll have to double check because it has been a couple years since I was there. Looks like they've got like wedding venue stuff going on now too. But I would be really interested if they're still hosting all the classes because I thought it was so cool to be able to be sharing that with their community, especially because it's like rural out there, you know? It's like, how
Yes.
do you bring people out to like your completely rural location?
For real, though, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached an interesting like divergence from where we started. But I mean, talking about where people are going to live in the future, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, at least who are kind of aware and accepting of what's going on, are thinking along similar lines. And I'm
Mhm.
convinced that people are going to have to start repopulating rural areas because if like jobs are going down, nobody can live in the cities, everything's been bought up, and people want to do cool stuff like have sheep, like we're going to have to just find a way to do it ourselves instead of, I mean, like waiting for permission, I guess. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I say yes. I am very much, I'm actually really, first of all, I'm getting into regenerative economies. I'm taking this course through the Chisholm Legacy Project about that. And so I'm now all about like this communal living and building these like community oriented economies where everything kind of goes in circles, you know, through communities. And I feel like having land and building essentially these homesteads, because so the other thing, we're diverging again, but
I love it. I live for
I've
this.
been listening to this podcast called Our Ancestors Were Messy. Um, and so it's all about like all the Black historical figures that we've learned about, but really digging into their personal lives and discovering like how
Interesting.
messy these people were as like individuals. But one of the things that they talked about were these homestead like communities where people would kind of go out and get all these homesteads and essentially build their own homestead communities. And I'm like, we can do that again. See, here's me going like, we can do that.
We can do this. We got this.
We can do it.
Yeah.
Sharmon will do it. She'll hop in. She'll do it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then she'll like go
then I'll be
live
like, yeah, I
somewhere
got it.
hyper urban.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, let me tell you what I learned.
Yeah. That's exactly what's going to happen because I've been trying to garden this year and I'm like, we've done really well, but I stopped like harvesting things. And I had like a lot of herbs and I'm like, I just want the seeds now. I just want to collect all their
Yeah.
seeds. Who cares
I
about
think
the
that's
food?
really important though. I feel like, seeds can be really challenging to get a hold of. So totally get that. Sarah and I also have gardens. Hers is doing much better than mine is in this Colorado drought. As far as like dying arts and lost skill sets, like that's just another thing that I think there's so much to tackle and so much to try to learn how to do.
Yeah.
And that's where community comes into play because we can't all do it all.
We can't. And I love it because my sister definitely has more of a green thumb than I do. And so she's been walking me through things, but it's been a fun little experience trying to grow my own herbs and vegetables. So yeah.
Does it make you feel
Just
so
wait.
powerful? Like you feel connected to the earth, but you're just like, look, I made life. I made food.
Yes, because we're in North Dakota, so the ground was like frozen until May.
Yeah.
And so I started in March and my dad helped me build this entire like grow light little situation. And I had like all these shelves and my dad is like, you have a forest in here. And I'm like, it's great, isn't it?
It's
Look
an
at
addiction.
it.
Just wait until you get into canning.
No. Don't give me something
Yeah.
else to learn.
Well, you need to figure out what to do with all of your bounty, right? And then
Yes,
the
yes.
pipeline. Now I want a freeze dryer, but then I looked it up and they're like $3,000. So I don't
Man.
think that's going to happen.
My
Yeah,
God.
I know, right?
I wonder
I'm
if there's
like, I'll
like
just
a
get a fancy
library one. Can you
dehydrator.
like rent one? There's got to be like, that could be a community project, right? Like figuring out all of those things to help everybody figure out what to do with the
Yes.
food that they're gardening.
I actually just learned about something like this in my coursework for regenerative economies where people had these little libraries of like electronics or, lawnmowers or different things that people may not use a lot, or can't afford to just buy on their own and they can just go check it out from somewhere. And I'm like, I just love these concepts.
Yeah. I heard about that in where are they doing it? Words Finland. They have all of their libraries have like tool libraries. And so they get to like check out all kinds of things that like, you use every once in a while, but
Yeah.
you kind of have that shared expense and the shared maintenance for all of those things. And yeah, I think all of these things really play together into the common thread of like working together and building those relationships so that we can share the experience and share the
Mhm.
burden and
Yes.
share the work for the majority of everybody who's used to just living really individual lives. What do you think are some of those first initial steps for stepping into community?
Ooh, I think one, it's just this mindset change, right? I hear a lot of people talk about um, how nobody wants to work together or people are really bad at it. And I think, again, we're going to have to change that mindset if you want to be able to work with it. So one, it's just changing your mind about how you're working with people and what you're getting out of it. Because I think ultimately every time I listen to them, that is the problem. That they're not getting out of it what they want to get out of it. And so I'm like, we need to figure out what we can give versus what we can get from this. And it's interesting because I was talking with one of my favorite ED from Custom Collaborative. It's a fun little fashion nonprofit out of New York. And we were talking about collaboration, what that means. And she was just like, it's just when two wholes come together, like emphasis on the whole.
Mm,
And so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you really have to like bring your whole self into this and not just think somebody is going to fix something for you by
Yeah.
bringing them in, right? So we're working together parallel and going into that. And so again, and it's also one, not expecting that every collaboration or community is going to work, because we also have a sense that if I do this, it's going to work with everybody. And that's not the case. We're still human. We're still people. We work better with other, but with certain people, but we want to make sure that our goals are aligned and our purposes are aligned for this collaboration, as well as just, making sure you understand that you have to put something into it in order to make it work. And, I feel like those are like my biggest things. I just want people to change their mind about how this works. And not also just understanding that not everybody is going to think like you, right? We have
Mm.
like-minded individuals, and that's great, but allowing some kind of diversity and change and realizing that community doesn't mean that you always get along, right? It's about another quote from another book is like, it's about not making like individuals rich, it's about making communities rich. And that's where we're kind of aligning our goals and our purpose. Like, what is the whole purpose of you doing this? What is the purpose of you getting involved in a community? What is the purpose of you building that community? And when you start thinking outside of yourself, which is so hard to do, but
Mm.
when you start thinking outside of yourself, you'll find that things start working a little better.
Yeah. I really like that. I see a lot of value in that. I think our culture and the way that we have instant gratification really does program us to think of like, I need this. How do I
Yeah.
go get this? Rather
Yes.
than starting with, I have this. How can I contribute that to somebody else and
Yeah.
and let it come back to me? Um, yeah, it seems really meaningful.
So, like, with relationships, I notice sometimes, like, I used to try to approach, like, people in collaborations with generosity. But I feel like I'm having to switch my tactic because I feel like a lot of people are very suspicious of that, right? Have you experienced that at all?
Oh, for sure.
So, how do you
For
deal with
sure.
it?
I think one, it's leading and knowing like your own intentions, right? Because a lot of times people are doing stuff and saying things and you immediately get offended and you're like, excuse you. Like, that's not who I am at all. But I think when you realize that we have lived in this society where everybody is out for themselves and only thinking about themselves, that you recognize where people are coming from, and also recognize that trust is earned and
Okay.
people aren't going to necessarily give you their trust like right away. And so I think just being consistent in your approach and what you're doing. So when I teach about collaborations, like the first thing, of course, is just telling people that I need you to think about what you bring to the table first before you figure out what you want from people. So like figure out what you bring to the table, but also it's like it's a relationship building thing, right? So it means you showing up in some capacity. And I often give this example of an organization. They're based in Massachusetts. They worked with youth and they were just doing incredible things. And people would always like email them or, call them up and be like, we want to do stuff with you. We want to partner with you. And they're like, we don't know you. We've never seen you a day in our lives. But on that other side is there would people who would show up to events and be at their little virtual webinars, and they're like, "Oh, we've seen you before, right?" And so a big part of it is just engaging. And I find even in the nonprofit world when we're looking to collaborate and to partner, that's the first step. People want to like, are you actually involved and interested in what we're doing, before you come in like wanting something from us? And so I even now have a girl who's getting ready to start a nonprofit, and she went through like my nonprofit launch academy, and she's doing all this stuff. But the first thing she did was, find those organizations that are doing something similar and started volunteering. And, and even as she's volunteering and going through that process, she's talking to them a little bit about what she wants to do. And they're already like, hey, you're already giving your time to us and going through this stuff with us. Like, and they're already just starting to talk about what they can do when she gets up and running because like she showed up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? She showed up, she put in her
Yeah.
time, and she And I know that's part of that, giving generosity. But if you keep showing up and people see that you are, just consistent and being authentic about that relationship and wanting to build it, then it hits a little different.
And goes a long way. Well, speaking of showing up, I think that like we've really hit on so much today, and I'm so grateful that you were able to join us. And I'm sure we could just like keep hopping down rabbit holes and keep going. But I really want to talk about anything that you're doing that you want to promote, that we can tell our listeners about. How can we send them to you? What do you need? Currently from your community that we might be able to find some people for.
It is a really good question. Um, and because my mindset of always like leading first with what I can give, I always forget what do I need. But we're gonna work on it. We're gonna work on it. But you can hit up my nonprofit consulting website, which is blesseddesignsco.com. That have a ton of resources there. If you go to blesseddesignsco.com/friends for anybody wanting to start an organization, I have a lot of things in there about like a kind of a quiz, a little thing about whether you should even start an organization, whether you are drifting away from your original purpose, and even if you want to build a more community-centered thing. But also on the sustainable fashion side, I run a slow fashion challenge on Instagram. And it is literally just at slow fashion challenge. Um, and so that's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to build. Well, we're trying to build community. Instagram is making it so hard, y'all.
No.
Yeah.
I'm
No, the
making it so hard.
engagement is so down from a marketing perspective. Like the
Yeah.
engagement just does not exist on the platform anymore.
Yeah, it is. It's just so hard. But yeah, so there's that aspect as well. So
So we're
wherever
gonna
you want to.
we're gonna go to Sharmon's website to find all of the answers to our nonprofit questions, and we're gonna get engaged on Instagram in the slow fashion challenge.
Yes.
I'm excited about that actually. I might join, but I have to see if, what it's all about first.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of fun. We don't mind voyeurs if you just want to come
Okay. Well,
and
that's good to
observe for a
know.
little bit. So we usually do like a challenge for like 2 weeks out of the year. Sometimes we do it once, sometimes we do it twice a year, just kind of depending on our capacity. Because it is about slow fashion and just slowing down our living and not forcing ourselves to do anything. But we do it like once or twice a year, and we come up with prompts and people just post, when they can. Some people do the whole 2 weeks, some people do just a day here and there. It's all at your leisure, whatever you want to do, and like whatever the prompt brings up for you. It's always fun watching other people's interpretation, and I learn so much every year from different people. Like one time I learned that people thrifted their shoes and then like got them resold, and that's
Yeah.
how and I was like, you can do that.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So yeah, so it's always really, really interesting, a lot of fun. And it's like
Yeah, that
international,
sounds
so
awesome.
people from all over the world. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here for us. We were really excited to speak with you, and we'll let you know our plans to start a commune in the future because you're first on the
Yes.
invitation list.
I like it. I like it. I will bring the goats.
Perfect. Love goats.
Got some goat milk, make some goat milk soap,
They're so
Yeah.
resourceful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you to our listeners for being here as well. We will link to the resources and Sharmon's information on our website, nottheauthoritypodcast.com. Thank you again, Sharmon, for joining us.
Thank you.
And until next time, everybody, stay curious.